thank you for the opportunity, and I'm excited to talk about my work on pre-training graph neural networks. Okay, so here I want to talk about applying graph neural networks to application in scientific domains. For example, in chemistry, we have these molecular graphs where each node is an atom and each edge represents the chemical bond. And here we are interested in predicting the properties of molecules. For example, given this kind of molecular graph, we want to predict whether it's toxic or not. In biology, there's also a graph problem. For example, we have a protein-protein association graph where each node is a protein and the edge represents certain association between proteins. And these associations are very important to determine the functionality of the protein. And our goal is to, given this subgraph centered around the protein node, we want to predict whether this center protein node has certain biological activity or not. So what I want to say is that in many scientific domains, this graph problem appear a lot, and we want to apply GNNs to solve this problem. And just to review how GNNs can be used for graph classification. So GNNs obtain an embedding of the entire graph by following two steps. First, given this molecular graph, let's say molecule, we obtain the embedding of node by iteratively aggregate neighboring information. Once we do that, once we obtain this node embedding, we can pool this node embedding globally to obtain the embedding of the entire graph. And once we obtain this embedding of the entire graph, we can use it. We can apply linear function on top of it to predict whether this entire graph is, let's say, toxic or not. And just to say what this means is that here the node embedding is trying to capture the local neighborhood structure around each node. If we apply k-hop GNNs, this node embedding should capture k-hop local neighborhood. And then the embedding of the entire graph is basically aggregating this local structure, the node embedding that's capturing the local neighborhood structure. And this is how GNN work. And now I'm going to talk about challenges of applying machine learning to these scientific domains. And there are basically two fundamental challenges. The first challenge of applying machine learning to scientific domains is that the scarcity of label data. Obtaining labels in these scientific domains requires expensive lab experiments. For example, to say whether a molecule is toxic or not, we need to perform wet lab experiments, and these are very expensive. As a result, we cannot get a lot of training data, and machine learning models tend to overfit to this small training data. Another important issue is that out of distribution prediction, meaning that test examples we want to make prediction on tend to be very different from training examples. And this is really the nature of scientific discovery, because in scientific discovery, we want to discover some new molecule that is inherently very different from your training molecules. And in these domains, machine learning models extrapolate poorly. And especially these two challenges are becoming more challenging for deep learning. The first point of the label scarcity, deep learning models have a lot of parameters to train, typically in the order of millions. And in this regime, the number of training data is much less than the number of parameters, and deep learning models are extremely prone to overfitting on small label data. Another issue is that deep learning models are known to extrapolate poorly. And it's reported that models often make predictions based on spurious correlation in a data set without understanding the true causal mechanism of how to make prediction. So let's consider this a toy example of an image classification between polar bear and brown bear, whose image is shown here. So during training, let's say in our training data, most polar bears have snow background like this, and most brown bears have a grass background like this. And as a result, the model can learn to make prediction of whether it's the given image is polar bear or brown bear based on the image background rather than animal itself, because that's sufficient to make prediction over the training data set. But what if at the test time, if we see polar bear on the grass, then the model will, because the model is not understanding this prediction task, the model will perform poorly on the test data that is different from training data, and the model is just capturing this kind of spurious correlation in the training data set. And our key idea or the goal, given these challenges, is that we want to improve models out of distribution performance even with limited data. And the way we do this is to inject domain knowledge into a model before we apply them on scarcely labeled tasks. And this may work because the model already knows the domain knowledge before the model is training on our downstream data, so that the model can generalize well without many task-specific labeled data. And the model may be able to extract essential non-spurious pattern in the data, which allows the model to better extrapolate to the test data that's very different from training data. And a very effective solution to inject domain knowledge into model is called pre-training. And we pre-train a model on relevant tasks that's different from our downstream task where data is abundant. And after we pre-train the model's parameter already contains some domain knowledge. And once this is done, we can transfer this pre-trained model parameter to the downstream task, which is what we care about, and where we have small number of data. And we can start from the pre-trained parameter and fine-tune the parameter on the downstream tasks. Just to mention that pre-training has been hugely successful in the domain of computer vision and natural language processing. And it's reported that pre-training improves label efficiency. Also, pre-training improves out distribution performance. And because of this, and we think pre-training can be a very powerful solution to the scientific applications. And those two challenges are scarce labels and out of distribution prediction. So now we motivated this pre-training GNNs to solve the important problem in scientific applications. So let's consider, actually pre-trained GNNs. And our work is about designing GNNs pre-training strategies, and we want to systematically investigate the following two questions. How effective is pre-training GNNs, and what is the effective pre-training strategies? So as a running example, let's think about molecular property prediction for drug discovery. So given molecule, we want to predict its toxicity or biological activity. And a very naive strategy is multitask supervised pre-training on relevant labels. This means that in the, for example, chemical database, we have all the experimental measurements of various toxicity and biological activities of a lot of molecules. And we can first pre-train GNNs to predict those various diverse biological activity or toxicity. And then we expect GNNs parameter to capture some chemistry domain knowledge, which can be, and then we can transfer that parameter to our downstream task. And the setting that we consider is to study whether this naive strategy is effective. We consider this setting. We consider this binary classification of molecules. Given molecule, we want to judge whether it's a negative or positive. And we, for the supervised pre-training part, we consider predicting more than 1,000 diverse binary bioassays annotated over 450,000 molecules. So there are a lot of data in this pre-training stage. And then we transfer the parameter to our downstream task, which is an 8 molecular classification data sets. Those are relatively small, about 1,000 to 100,000 molecules. And for the data split, on the downstream task, we consider the scaffold split, which makes the test molecules out of distribution. And it turns out that the naive strategy of this multitask supervised pre-training on relevant labels doesn't work very well. It gives a limited performance improvement on downstream tasks and even leads to negative transfer, which means that the pre-trained model performs worse than randomly initialized model. So here's the table, here's the figure. So we have 8 downstream data sets, and the y-axis is the raw AUC improvement over no pre-training baseline. So this purple is a no pre-training baseline. And we see that naive strategy sometimes work well, but for this 2 data sets, it's actually performing worse than non-pre-trained randomly initialized baseline. So this is kind of not desirable. We want pre-trained model to perform better. So then we moved on to our next question, what is an effective pre-training strategy? And our key idea is to pre-train both node and graph embeddings so that GNNs can capture domain-specific knowledge about the graph at the both local and global level. So in the naive strategy, we pre-train GNNs only at the level of graph, use this graph embedding to make a various prediction. But we think it's important to also pre-training this node embedding, because these node embeddings are aggregated to generate the embedding of the entire graph. So we need to have a high quality node embedding that capture the local neighborhood structure well. So, and the intuition behind this is that, so here's the figure, the upper side means the node embedding, and these node embeddings are pooled to generate the embedding of the graph. And we want the quality of the node embedding and graph embedding to be both high quality, capture the semantics, and this is different from the naive pre-training strategy where, for example, if we do node level pre-training, we capture the semantic at the level of nodes, but if those node embeddings are globally aggregated, we may not be able to obtain nice graph embedding. Or if we only pre-training GNNs at the level of graph, we can obtain nice graph embedding, but there's no guarantee that before aggregation, those node embeddings are of high quality. And this may lead to a negative transfer because the node embeddings are kind of not robust. So in order to realize this strategy to pre-train GNNs at the level of both nodes and graphs, we designed 3 concrete methods. 2 self-supervised methods, meaning there's no need for external labels for node level pre-training, and 1 graph level prediction pre-training strategy, pre-training method that's supervised. So let me go through these 3 concrete methods. Okay, so the first method is the attribute masking. It's a node level pre-training method. The algorithm is quite simple. So given an input graph, we first mask randomly mask node attributes. So let's say we mask these 2 node attributes. In the molecular graphs, this node that we are basically masking the identity of the atom. And then we can use GNNs to generate node embeddings of these 2 masked nodes. And we use these node embeddings to predict the identity of the masked attributes. So here we want to use the node embedding to predict that this X is an oxygen and this X is a carbon. And the intuition behind this is that through solving the mask attribute prediction task, our GNN is forced to learn the domain knowledge because it kind of needs to solve this quiz. And through this, solving this kind of quiz, GNN can learn the parameter of the GNN can capture the chemistry domain. The next self-supervised task that we propose is called context prediction. And here, the algorithm is as follows. So for each graph, we sample 1 center node. Let's say this is red nodes, and for this center node, we extract neighborhood and context graph. So neighborhood graph is just a k-hop neighborhood graph. In this case, 2-hop neighbor graph like this. And then the context graph is a surrounding graph that's directly attached to this k-hop neighborhood graph. Once we do extract this graph, we can use 2 separate GNNs to encode this neighborhood graph into, use one GNN to encode this neighborhood graph into a vector, another GNN to encode this context graph into a vector. And our objective is to maximize the inner product between the true neighborhood context pair while minimizing the inner product between the false false neighborhood context pair. And these false pairs can be obtained by randomly sample context graph from other neighborhoods. And here the intuition is that we're assuming that subgraphs that are surrounded by similar contexts are semantically similar. So we are basically pushing the embedding of the neighborhood to be similar if they have a similar context graphs. And this is a kind of widely used assumption in natural language processing. It's called distributional hypothesis. So words that appear in the similar context have similar meaning. And it's exploited in the famous word-to-vec model. So finally, I'm going to talk about this graph level pre-training task, which is essentially what I introduced before. So multi-task supervised pre-training on many relevant graph level labels. And this is really the direct approach to inject domain knowledge into the model. So to summarize the overall strategy, we first perform node level pre-training to obtain good node representation. We use that pre-trained parameter to further perform pre-training at the level of graph using supervised graph level pre-training. Once we've done both steps, we fine-tune the parameters on the downstream tasks that we care about. So this is the overall strategy. And it turns out that our strategy works pretty well. As you can see, these green dots are our strategy. And our strategy first avoids the negative transfer in these 2 data sets and also consistently perform better than this orange naive strategy baseline across the 8 data sets. And also another interesting side note is that we fixed the pre-training strategy and the pre-training different GNNs models use different GNNs model for pre-training. And what we found out is that the most expressive GNN model, namely GIN, that we learned in the lecture, benefits most from pre-training. As you can see here, the gain of non-pre-trained model versus non-pre-trained model is the largest in terms of accuracy. And the intuition here is that the expressive GNN model can learn to capture more domain knowledge than less expressive model, especially learned from large amounts of data during pre-training. So to summarize, GNNs, we've learned that the GNNs have important application in scientific domains like molecular property prediction or protein function prediction. But those application domains present the challenges of label scarcity and out of distribution prediction. And we argue that pre-training is a promising framework to tackle both of these challenges. However, we found that naive pre-training strategy of this supervised graph level pre-training gives suboptimal performance and even leads to negative transfer. And our strategy is to effective strategy is to pre-train both node and graph embeddings. And we found this strategy leads to a significant performance gain on diverse downstream tasks. Yeah, thank you for listening.